covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Out to the zone phone we go. He covers the Utes for KSLSports.com. He joins us on Fridays. He's Steve Bartle. What's up, Steve?
What's up, fellas? How we doing?
Steve, you ready to call this season the hot to-go curse? Is this the Chapel Roan curse for the University of Utah? Is this your fault, Steve?
Dude, apparently a lot of things are my fault this season, and I am willing to take the blame. I will be that guy.
I heard you got Andy Ludwig fired. That was a new
Good
one to
grief.
me. You're powerful, man. I'm glad we hired you.
Wait, hold on. What point was that guy trying to make? I saw that too, and I was baffled. I too believe in Steve's power of persuasion. But what was that even implying?
That I don't know. I wrote an article, and I wrote the article based on what Kyle Whittingham, some of the sentiments and some of the things he said in his post-game presser.
So you were doing your job.
I wrote my article.
Yeah,
I was doing my job.
All right.
And apparently that
did it.
That did it. So,
note to self.
I don't know.
Note to self. Be nicer to Steve.
Whit was on the station this morning, so he's a KSL Sports fan.
Obviously.
Wow.
Okay. Anyway, I didn't
Appreciate
mean to hijack the interview. I just didn't know where that was coming from. So good to know.
Steve, it's crazy. Utah's on a bye week, and things have gotten worse from a health perspective from the last time we talked. Money Parks is out for the rest of the year. Heward is now hurt and has an injury and is not going to come back. Do we know anything about the Heward background? And was this like an elective surgery and he realized he wasn't in the running, or did something happen?
I haven't heard specifics on what led to the injury. It's interesting, though, because, after the game Cam got hurt, Arizona State, after that, I had heard that Heward was elevated to QB3 and that during that week of practice, he actually, he was showing good signs of progress. So that was during the TCU week? And so this happened. This has all happened pretty recently with Heward. So caught me by surprise to hear that this morning from Whit, because it's been pretty mum on Heward since then. But yeah, I mean, Money Parks earlier this week, it was announced that he's out for the season. And we saw that injury in the Houston game. He took a big hit. And so not too surprising there. But yeah, the injuries, I mean, they just continue to mount. And at some point, Whittingham and the coaching staff, the auxiliary staff and strength and conditioning, they really need to take a closer look at what they're doing, because this is now, it's not just this year and it's not just last year, even the year before, in 2022, you can go through that season and there were a good number of injuries there too. And so they've got to take a closer look at what they're doing, how much workload they're putting on these guys, because these injuries are just mounting. And some of these are, freak injuries. Obviously, you can't control Money Parks getting injured, taking a big hit, and there's not much you can really do there. But just the amount of injuries overall, it's baffling what we've seen over the last couple of years with Utah.
Steve, it's crazy to me what they're putting Isaac Wilson through. I was walking around the other day, and I of course got notified about a Bartle bomb, saying that the reps are going to be split 50-50 in practice and this open competition stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, this kid isn't going to have enough confidence to pick his nose. What are they doing? What are they doing to this? He's a true freshman. That there's stuff that comes along with that, and that's what you bargained for when you played him in the first place. And now they're just running him through the ringer. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
It's interesting, right? And we don't know the reasoning why exactly. Kyle Whittingham was pretty short in what he shared, that him and Rose are splitting reps. But he also noted that Wilson has been dealing with some injuries that have mounted. And you go back to that Houston game last week, he took a couple big hits. And I think, those hits, one, he was tossed to the ground pretty hard and came up. He had to leave the game because of his non-throwing arm. Seemed to be took a direct hit with the ground and was shaken up. And so, it seems like injuries have contributed to this. But also, too, over the last couple games, he's dealt with just so much pressure, so many defenders in his face. And, I think part of this, maybe it's to protect him, because he's just not getting the sort of protection he needs. He's not getting the ball out quickly enough. And so perhaps that's part of the equation here. We don't know because Kyle Whittingham hasn't explained that. But I do think, with Rose and with Wilson, this bye week is crucial for them to really just kind of reset and get back to some of the foundational things that they need to do and start executing at a better level. So with this week to compete, it's really about who's going to take this opportunity serious enough. And it sounds like these guys are taking it serious and are going to practice. They've had good practices. Kyle Whittingham noted that this week, that on Tuesday they just had one of their best practices of the season. And that's going to be important. They've just got to continue to build, stack these days on top of each other and move forward. But it's certainly, the quarterback position is certainly a delicate position compared to the rest of the football team. And there's certainly some nuance. And, for us on the outside, it appears like some of that nuance, some of that, care is a little lacking. But I think, we need to give this group, these guys, time to get through this, to work through this. And we'll see. We'll see what that translates next week on Saturday against BYU.
Beating BYU is the biggest thing Utah could do for the rest of the year. That would be the biggest accomplishment. I guess maybe making a bowl game would be number 2. But let me kind of take that conversation off the table. What's the most important thing Utah needs to do over the final 4 games to be in the best spot to compete next year?
What a good question, Ben, because really, I think that BYU game would really do a lot for them in terms of what it means for them moving forward beyond this season, because that can directly impact, a number of different things, recruiting in state, and that's going to be a big point of focus. You get a big win over BYU, who's at the top of the conference. That can do a lot for you moving forward. I do think this BYU game has a lot riding on it for Utah and BYU as well, right? Like, they've got this tremendous season, and you have the chance to play spoiler. That can do a lot for you as well to maintain, I shouldn't say maintain, but to potentially, gain an edge in that battle, right, in that rivalry and going into the offseason. So I do think that BYU game has a lot going on for Utah, has a lot of potential for the program to kind of build moving forward. But really, you just want to see, signs of progress from certain individuals. Obviously, the quarterback position, you'd love to see that sort of settled and at least have a better idea than what you have right now of what that group is going to be moving forward. You'd love to see somebody emerge. And Isaac Wilson can certainly be that guy. Potentially, Brandon Rose, takes advantage of this opportunity of a renewed quarterback battle, and perhaps he steps forward in that room. So that's probably the next biggest thing you'd like to see over the next 4 games is somebody, take that next step in that quarterback room to set you up for the future. I think that's super important as well. And, it's just, you want to see this group continue to fight, continue to put in the effort over these next 4 games. These are, we've talked about it all season long. This stretch is now, without a question, the toughest stretch of the schedule, given what BYU and Iowa State and even Colorado's playing. They've gotten so much better over the course of the year. And with the star talents that they have, that's a tough game. And UCF, too, that's going to present a challenge because Utah has struggled to stop the run lately. And with the way that they run the ball, this is going to be a tough stretch. So you just want to see these guys continue to play hard and do that moving forward.
Steve, I'm sure you're a man who's been employed a bunch throughout your life. Have you ever been hired to a position where your job basically is to take the blame? Like, I could honestly tell you, I've taken a job where my whole job was going to be to take the blame for things that I had very little to do with, if any. But you know who was getting blamed? This guy. That was the job. You ever had one of those?
I have not experienced that in my
terrible.
life, but maybe I'm feeling that right now. Maybe is that what this feels like this year? Is that
it's terrible. You don't want to do it. But with that in mind, what kind of candidates are going to be available for Utah to hire at offensive coordinator? I mean this seriously, because Witt's offensive coordinator hires in the past have not been very imaginative. They've been in his close circle for whatever reason, and I would argue that it hasn't gone terrifically well. Even Andy Ludwig is from his inner circle. You know, they go back to coaching under Mac. I mean, who would this is too mean, but I'll put it this way anyway. Who would take that job?
You know, it's interesting because you look at this team and there's still plenty of talent on this roster. There's still a lot of guys that you can build with. That offensive line is tremendous. And, you know, if you have an offensive line that, has two really good offensive tackles, the way Utah does with Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano, that's a great starting point for any offensive coordinator. You'd love to have a good offensive line because that can do a lot for you. The quarterback situation, obviously, that can be fixed in an offseason, right? You dip into the portal, you can change your fortunes with a good transfer addition. Or you could go the other way, the opposite way, with a bad transfer portal addition. But there's still always that potential to kind of flip that spot, you know, in the transfer portal. We've seen it throughout the country. We've seen Cam come in here at Utah, transfer from Texas, come in and kind of flip the fortunes for Utah over the last few years. We've seen it work the other way for Utah with Jake Bentley and Charlie Brewer, where those two didn't work out. So you can flip that position pretty quickly. With the offensive coordinator position, obviously you got to look at Mike Bajakian first and foremost. He's the guy in the seat right now, and he has an opportunity to kind of prove his worth. And, you know, it's really a situation where, you know, he's going to have an advantage because he knows the personnel and he knows and just knows what the strengths and weaknesses of this group moving forward is. So you look at him first and foremost. Beyond that, you know, then the question becomes, well, who's going to be, you know, we know where Whittingham is at in his career. So whose decision is this going to be really? Is it going to be Kyle Whittingham's decision to find an offensive coordinator? Is it potentially going to be Morgan Skelly? Does he have a voice in this next offensive coordinator search? And that potentially changes things in terms of who Utah looks to and who they potentially, you know, what sort of offensive coordinator they're looking for. You know, and with Morgan Skelly, obviously he's coached at Utah. He's been under Kyle Whittingham for all these years. But, you know, he knows where this game is headed. He knows that the passing game is going to be it's such a focal point, you know, not only offensively but defensively too, right? He's mentioned this you know, over the last couple of years that, you know, defenders even want to, you know, they want to see an offense that can throw the ball because that's just where the game is headed. And he knows that, you know, a good offense can impact recruiting, and that's super important. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see once we get into the offseason to learn some of the dynamics of this next offensive coordinator search. Obviously, it's super important given where the program is at with Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Skelly in the waiting. And, you know, we'll see what that brings.
I told Ben this earlier. They need to hire Cooper Manning.
Bring his son over.
Yeah.
Bring Arch Manning.
Cooper Manning.
And I said backup quarterbacks in Texas have worked well at Utah, at running back and at quarterback.
Bring in his kid. Yeah.
Bring in Arch. Hey, I'm with it. You know, we love those sort of package deals. Those are great. Yeah, I'm with that.
Yeah, you could sell it. He's a Manning. I mean, who cares how much coaching experience he has? And then he brings his kid, and there you go. Problem solved. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's great.
I need to start my own search firm for coaching. Really, I find the whole concept of a search firm stupid. It feels like you're just giving somebody else money to do your job or whatever. But I could come up with better candidates than these firms do. Are you kidding me? I'd hire Cooper Manning tomorrow.
The Jake Hatch search firm.
Yeah, exactly.
Jake Scott.
I'll work for Hatch.
But yeah, Jake Hatch
fine.
is fine too.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Oh, Jake Scott, my bad. I think you Jake mixed up, man. Forgive me. I apologize.
He gets my emails.
Halloween last
does.
night,
Yeah.
you know. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry, Jake.
Did you walk around with? You've got a young child. Did you guys go trick or treating?
We did, yeah. We went out with our neighbors last night. We've all got kids around the same age within a couple months, so that was fun. We then came back to our house and had a nice little Halloween get-together party type of deal. So, yeah, last night was a lot of fun. Miles dressed up as Stanley Yelnats from Holes. And,
oh, nice.
And we had a good time.
What'd you dress up as?
I was Mr. Sir from holes. So
Did you have the tattoo? Does he have the tattoo, or is it the woman who has the tattoo?
I think it's the woman who has the tattoo.
Yeah, she's got the snake tattoo.
Yeah, I think it's the woman. I had the straw hat. I had the belt buckle, the tucked-in shirt. Yeah, I pulled it off really well.
I would have been one of those people that looked at you, Bartle, and go, I have no idea what that guy's doing.
I don't know what you are.
I've got no clue. Bartle, thank you. You're great. We'll follow all of your work. We'll continue to follow all of your work at KSLSports.com. Thanks, buddy.
Jake, Scott, Ben Anderson, appreciate you both.
Have a great weekend, Steve. I know I'm not the one that came up with that, but Bartle Bomb,
I like the Bartle Bomb.
That's got to be a thing going forward. I mean, I'm sure somebody else has thought of that, but Bartle Bomb, that just comes off the tongue way too easy. And Steve breaks news all the time.
You know what I like about Steve? He's been watching presidential debates because I said, let's take beating BYU off the table. What's the most important thing BYU or Utah could do the rest of the year? He goes, you know what? I think beating BYU would really be.
Don't answer
the question I asked.
No, I got you.
Give me the answer you want to give me. And you know what? It is the right answer. That is the truth. Utah beating BYU would be the single most important thing they can do the rest of the year. I think it would be more important for Utah to go 1-3 beating BYU than 3-1 losing to BYU. I would listen to that.
Okay, can I answer your question, though?
Sure.
I would say, and this is, I mean this is a point of why it's great that BYU's in a conference, actually. But one of the great parts about being in a conference that was missing the entire time they were in independence is, you know what the most important thing Utah has going on there, if they buck up and have a little pride, it's ruining the day of everybody else in the league.
It is.
They could beat BYU. They could beat Iowa State.
Colorado.
They could beat Colorado and ruin their fortunes. And then you got to go, well, hey, I didn't win, but you know what? You didn't either.
Yeah, Captain Chaos.
I love that.
Yeah, and we're still going to be something to be
that's something
dealt with going into next season.
Right.
If you can close the year, and obviously I don't think Utah's going to.
I wouldn't bet on it, yeah.
But yeah, beating 3 ranked opponents, yeah, you're going to be in really good shape going into the offseason and have a little bit of momentum. But any one thing that does not include beating Iowa State, beating BYU, and beating Colorado, yeah, beating BYU is the answer.
And I liked Steve's argument about who would take that job, being the offensive coordinator. He said, well, they've got a lot of talent. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. But I don't think anybody would take that job because they can't do things the way they want to do it with that talent. That's the problem. It'd be like being on a diet and working at a buffet. It's like,
they have great food.
I'm around all this great food, but
I
can't eat any of it. I'm over here eating saltines.
Yeah.
But I think his point is a valid one. I mean, the line should be pretty good. Mekhi Bernard is pretty good. Brand Keithy's pretty good. I mean, those guys are leaving.
Yeah, they're gone next year. That's the problem.
Like, they have some players.
Right, Dorian Singer's gone next year, right?
Yeah, they lose a lot.
So,
but that lot is losing. So what do you really lose when you?
It's going to be interesting. Witt has not traditionally hit home runs with these hires, so we will see what happens. If Witt's the guy making the decision, Witt may step down too.
Welcome to the Hometown Buffet. One of your benefits for employment is you can eat anything you want.
Well, I'm on a diet.
Oh, man. Dang it. Stay tuned. Are these crackers included? 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is DJ and PK.
Joined now by Utah football coach Kyle Whittingham. How long does it take to shake off a loss or 4 of them? This isn't something you've had to deal with. This has got to be weird, quite frankly.
Yeah, it is, and I guess that's a positive that we have not had to deal with that. But obviously a huge negative that we're right in the middle of it. It's trying for everybody. The players, to their credit, have had a very positive attitude throughout practices and preparation, so that's been something that's been good to see. But bottom line, we got to find a way to get a W, and it's been a really tough month, to say the least. We're trying everything we possibly can to get this thing turned around. I can tell you that. There's no stones left unturned, nothing that we're not evaluating, reevaluating, and we just got to keep searching for the answer. No shortcuts. It's nothing but hard work and trying to figure things out.
Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
1, 2, 3, move it.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jacob Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Want to remind you can win lunch from the KSL Sports Zone and Cafe Rio on Taco Tuesday. Listen every Tuesday for your chance to win a $20 Cafe Rio gift card. Learn more about Taco Tuesday and the great deals available every week at CafeRio.com. Ben, can I bring up something that is not tangible at all and one of those subjective things
like
that
a memory?
We obviously, when we talk about, have no idea what we're talking about, but I do find interesting?
Sure.
All right. Did you hear or see Draymond Green's comments after the Thunder game?
Yes.
He said, quote, "The one thing I see about the Oklahoma City team that's alarming to me is their post game. 7 guys in the interview. There's a certain seriousness it takes to win in this league, and there's a certain fear you have to instill in teams in order to win. I just don't know if they're instilling that fear in teams with all the bromance and stuff after the game."
If you haven't seen it, after every game, they do a sideline interview on television, and their reporter, Nick, or whoever's doing it, their sideline people, will pick one person. And inevitably, the rest of the team comes and joins them in the conversation. But they are basically there to support whoever is being interviewed, but they're goofing around and joking around.
Now, here's what so I don't buy entirely into the everybody has to be friends in the locker room and that has some sort of impact. People care about that way too much.
Yep.
We get a lot of that, like, oh, well, these guys love each other and all this stuff. And it's like, I don't know how much that really helps you win. But it's interesting that Draymond now is going the other way and saying that, well, if everybody likes each other, it's actually a negative. And I don't necessarily buy into that either. However, Ben, I do think we talked to Mitch about this at the beginning of the show. I do think the chip on the shoulder vibe benefits this BYU football team.
Okay.
And I do think part of the spiral of Utah's football team is some toxic internal stuff or some stuff internal that has gone south on them. And it's not a real healthy environment at the moment, which, by the way, to let them off the hook a little bit, losing 4 in a row rarely produces a healthy environment.
Yeah,
so
you don't want it to.
Right. I'm not really trying to throw stones, but this stuff can matter. I don't know if the buddy bro stuff matters. And instilling fear, I mean, shut up, Draymond.
Yeah, right.
That's not even, I don't think worth, but I do think like the internal vibes on the team can make a difference. I don't think like buddy vibes necessarily, but does this make any sense? I mean, it's totally subjective and not measurable, but the fact that BYU's team plays harder because of a motivating factor, regardless of what it is, and maybe Utah not playing as hard because the incentive is gone and you feel like you're doing your job, but they're not doing their job and this and that. I don't know. Where's the magic? Does it matter? Does it not matter?
How you play compared to expectation is a huge determining point in how fun the season is, both as a fan and I would imagine being on the team. If you went into BYU's season this year in that locker room and everyone's saying this Big 12 is stacked, these 4 games in the middle of your season are going to kill you, you're going to be going into Houston and Arizona State hoping to get a victory or maybe needing to be both to get a bowl game, and you're 6-0, and then you're 7-0, and then you're 8-0, I bet that's really fun. I bet you being Utah and going to the Big 12 Media Day and seeing your name atop the list of every media poll saying you're going to be the number 1 team and struggling is a lot less fun. So, yeah, you set that expectation before the year, and then how you meet or fall short or exceed that expectation probably determines some of that. Now, I think that's more of as a fan, to your point, than it is as a locker room. And I didn't compete in high-level locker rooms. I don't know exactly what that's like, but the human nature of it, I think, does apply. So when you fall short of expectations, you get down on yourself, and how do you bounce back? But you are totally right. The buddy thing is so overrated. I bet you there are Jazz players who don't know each other. There's 13 people, 15 people.
Remember when strength of the team is the team thing was a thing for whatever season that was? It was a thing.
Yeah.
Like, that was part of the reason that they played better. Because they bought into all of that. Like, motivation is a funny thing. Like, because sports, the guy who plays harder is often more successful. Like, BYU, honestly, they have half a dozen plays between 8-0 and 5-3.
5-3, yeah, absolutely.
But there's a reason, and I believe this. There's a reason that those plays went BYU's way. You could look at them and say, well, this was lucky and that was lucky, and the ball bounced this way and the ball bounced that way. But there's a reason that all 6 of them went to BYU. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They wanted it more, or whatever cliche
They played
you want to throw out.
unselfishly. They believed in
all
each
those
other.
Things, like, that is a thing. Now, I mean, you could look at somebody like Kansas, because Utah's spiraling so badly, I won't even throw Utah in it. But look at Kansas's the outcomes of their games, Ben. They're all decided by 3 points or less. I mean, they're a half dozen plays away from being whatever.
4-4.
5-3 too, probably,
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah, well, exactly, whatever. But it's not a coincidence that all those plays are going against Kansas.
Yeah, okay, so, and the best example of this for me right now is go back to the SMU game, and I'm going to forget who the player was, so I apologize. Because it seemed slightly inconsequential at the time, but in retrospect, it's a huge play. Jake Retzlaff throws a interception backed up on their own 3-yard line. SMU picks it off, and an offensive lineman for BYU, it wasn't Connor Pay, I don't think, but gets up and makes the tackle on the defensive player who Jake Retzlaff threw the ball right to. Threw it right to him. If he goes into the end zone, that changes the outcome of the game because BYU loses that game. BYU ends up winning, 17-14 or 16-13, whatever it was, 18-15, because SMU only kicks field goals. They get to the end zone, they get those 4 points, they win 19-18. If the offensive lineman says, okay, Jake Retzlaff again.
Yeah.
This bozo, I wanted Bohannon. Retzlaff's the guy just throwing it to anybody. It's early enough in the season. Still, what was that, week 2? He's just throwing it to whoever out there. Yeah, he doesn't make the tackle. You lose that game. And this magical season doesn't happen. But you say, hey, I owe it to this team, or I owe it to my quarterback, or whatever. I'm going to make the play. BYU ends up getting a stop. I think that's the same drive where SMU tried to lateral the ball to itself at the 3-yard line. Gives the ball up, BYU gets it back, and they win the game. It's like, yes, absolutely. But if you hate or you don't believe in the guy next to you, or the quarterback behind you, or the receiver he's throwing the ball to, you're going to make that stop? Yeah. You don't care. No, absolutely. So, yes, that part of it matters. And that's actually where I think Oklahoma State being this buddy-buddy is a benefit and not a detriment. And by the way, Draymond, go watch Steph Curry's pregame routine shooting the ball. It's not just him drilling threes that he's stepping up to. He and the assistant coach are kicking the ball to each other. They're trying to set up alley-oops. Yeah. They're doing the goofy stuff of him turning around. Like, the amount of fun that exists in Steph Curry's game that he manufactures, he has to put in there for himself to keep it fun, is part of the reason why Golden State's as good as they are.
Well, Draymond shouldn't be taken seriously. I just think it's hilarious that he's using that, like, cliche, these guys are such good teammates, blah, 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 and saying that's actually a negative. I rarely, if ever, take Draymond Green seriously on anything. But vibe and motivation and that sort of thing is a thing. Like, it is a huge thing. I'm going to keep this story super vague, but because I love me some Coach Ron McBride. But I talked to a player who was on Mac's last team, and you would laugh when I'll tell you off the air who it was, and you would laugh. But anyway, told me that some of the motivational tactics that Mac was using that year were a little hokey, and I'm not going to get more specific because I love me some Coach Mac. But the kind of the point of the story was Mac was at that job for a long time, and his message wasn't landing like it used to. And then Urban comes in, and his message really lands, and the next year they're awesome, right? And it's not. I'm not saying this to cast any blame on Coach Mac by any means, but it is. You've seen that Frank Beamer of Virginia Tech, just his message didn't land. His teams weren't as good.
Sure.
Because he just didn't connect with the players and wasn't able to motivate them like he used to. Like, it is a huge deal. And if Urban proved anything, is that, man, the locker room doesn't have to like each other. In fact, the locker room doesn't even need to like the coach.
Yeah.
But how do you, in fact, Urban's methods of motivation are pretty sick and twisted, honestly. But it works.
It did work.
It works.
Yeah.
It's cruel, but it absolutely works. And I'm not talking about kicking players. I'm talking about he did some mind game stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Every player thought they were going to get cut.
That was just crazy.
Except for 4, and he really empowered those 4 to be superstars.
Yeah. Now, Lavelle loved up everybody. That was his superpower. I mean, there's more than one way to do things.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. If there was one right way to do it, lots of teams would win championships because it would be easy. You would say, oh, well, I was the assistant coach in Golden State, and it won there, so I'm going to bring it to Milwaukee and install it there, and it will work. It doesn't. It's human. That's the fun part of sports. It's human. All of this stuff has to fit perfectly for you to win.
A hilarious story, I still remember it. Steve Kerr let his players coach a game and said, he's like, these guys don't listen to me at all. They're not listening to me at all. So if I have to let them coach a game in order to get their attention again, then I guess I'll do that. It's like, wow, that's crazy. But he's been coaching that team forever, the same players. He's been saying the same stuff over and over again, I'm sure.
Yep.
And
how do you get it to land?
How do you get it to land? How do you get your message to continue?
Jerry Sloan did it.
Yeah.
Famously, one year, the team said, we want to play faster. We're sick of how methodical the pick and roll is. Jerry said, all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
And the players played fast for about 15 games, and they had a really disappointing record. And Stockton came up to him and said, when are we going to stop playing like this? When are we going to stop playing quickly? He's like, you guys made this choice. Like, I'm listening to you guys. You don't want to listen to me? There's a reason we've been doing it this way. And they fixed it, and they went on some crazy run. You know, like they had one of their great years under John and Jerry and Carl. It was just, there was a lot of motivational techniques.
Phil Jackson's basketball acumen had nothing to do with why he was a good coach.
Right.
Nothing.
Great motivator, though.
He could take these personalities and somehow mesh them together into getting out there.
And by the way, in good and bad ways.
Right.
Like, no one liked Michael, and Shaq and Kobe hated each other.
Yeah.
And he used that as a tool, not as a way to...
Right.
He wasn't constantly just sweeping up after them. He used that as a way to make the team better. Yeah, that's the hard part.
He wrote a book about how much he hated Shaq and Kobe and then coached them again 2 years later. So funny.
Yep.
But I think that is a really interesting part of coaching because that makes all the difference. I mean, you look at 2008 Utah, they had all these things go their way. They were at least, 3 plays away from having 2 losses that year, and it goes their way. I don't think that's an accident all the time.
But if OKC doesn't win the title this year, I'm not going to say it's because they liked each other too much.
No, that's ludicrous.
I don't think that's going to be their issue.
I agree. I agree. That's ludicrous. Just like it's, oh man, this team's all best friends. I don't think that's the difference either.
Yeah, if you're not good enough and everyone likes each other, you're not good enough.
That's part of the reason I love play hard and pass.
Yeah.
You don't have to like each other. You don't even have to like that.
You think anyone likes Kyle Filipowski? Did you see, by the way, he caught
I'm sure everyone
Steph
hates
Castle. He's 3 for 3.
I missed it.
Came down. Oh, I'll show you the video. He comes down for a rebound and out of nowhere just sticks his right arm out and elbows Spurs lottery pick Steph Castle right in the face and pop because it was right in front of the Spurs bench. It's like, what?
Oh man, he's quickly becoming my favorite.
Oh, this
player.
Is his dirtiest play yet too.
Is it?
Like, I'll show you during the break. It was great
because he has one eyeball gouge on his record. Yes. Hey, that's how he sticks around the league. I'm sorry if that's a painful truth to people, but that's how that guy exists.
100%.
All right, stay tuned. We wrap up the show next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's the call or the store.
Lassiter getting it in! Touchdown!
For the first time since 2010.
Touchdown! Caleb Wilmer!
The Holy War will feature Utah versus BYU as conference rivals.
Keeper for Bretzloff. Bretzloff shakes him up at the 5, the 10, the touchdown! Big boy football, Mekhi Bernard into the end zone.
And never have we seen so much on the line for both schools over the next 2 weeks. The Zone will get you ready for another chapter of this historic rivalry.
We going to war, baby.
Where so much is on the line for both schools. Your home for the best coverage of Utah and BYU football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
I'm ready for war.
Who's got it better than us?
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two niggas on the airways, talking sports. They got him made Jackson on soul. Loves his tie-dye, Ben's got style with his scarves. Oh my. basketball courts. They may be engaged in their thoughts.
That was awesome. I mean, Steph Castle doesn't have a face anymore.
He couldn't breathe this morning leaving.
This segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach Doors and Windows, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. What was the call on that? They called a foul?
I think they did call an offensive foul on Flip, but not a flagrant one. An ejection like may have been warranted.
Yeah, I'd take a foul for a hard elbow.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, Steph Castle isn't breathing right this morning. Like, he snored all night.
It's the next game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He has a CPAP machine for the rest of his life.
Poor guy. I honestly feel bad for him.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. It stinks. But that's how part of the reason why Flip's going to be in the NBA for a long time.
Because he's got sharp elbows. Sharp bows.
He knows how to use them.
We were saying this, though. He needs to be a little more subtle with it. Like, the clinic was pretty subtle most of the time. That was not subtle.
No, not
that
at all.
elbow was not. That was not subtle in the slightest. All right, are we going to pick this terrible game? Is that what we're doing?
Let's do it.
We did not last week.
Did not do it last week. I was out. But going back 2 weeks ago, we did Tulsa at Temple. Ben picked Tulsa, but Temple won at home 20-10.
I was wrong?
Yes.
About my Owls?
Yep.
Dang. All right.
So Jake is at +3 now for the season.
We're running out of time. Like, I got to do a clean sweep the rest of the way. We
Week
got 4
10's
weeks
pick,
left.
we're going to go North Carolina. They are 4-4, 1-3 in conference. They're playing at Florida State, who's 1-7, 1-6 in conference. Over/under is 50.5. North Carolina is 2.5-point favorites.
So what am I? I've got. We're not doing over/under, right?
No.
Okay.
Just straight winners.
Just winner.
It's amazing how bad Florida State is.
1-9? Is that what you said?
1-8.
1-7.
1-7. They've had 2
overall,
bye
1-6 in conference.
They were top 10 to start the season.
Yeah, they were undefeated last year. That's amazing. Give me Mac Brown and the Heels. Going on the road.
Mac Brown's a good coach, actually. I know this has not been the ideal spot, but North Carolina's not an ideal place to win. He's a good coach.
He's a good coach. Good, not great. He should have been better at Texas than he even was. He had some underachievers there at Texas, but yeah. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's probably the best coach North Carolina has ever had.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah.
But they're underachieving.
Well, that's easy. Florida State. Of course, Florida State's going to lose. Yeah. That's an easy one. I think.
Does Dion take the Knoll job next year? Both Florida and Florida State are going to be open.
Someone's going to give him $1 trillion. You know, someone's going to give him all the money. And rightfully so. And he's going to lose. I mean, I looked at the latest, the latest. There's 50,000 mock drafts. But the last Tankathon NFL mock draft I looked at had Travis Hunter 1 and Shador 2. So, yeah, if he's losing his top 2 guys to the NFL, including his son, why wouldn't he go to be closer to home? He's got no ties to Colorado.
What about the other son?
Who?
Shiloh.
No, his 2 sons are Travis Hunter and Shador.
Very funny. Who did Colorado have this week? Here, allow me to look.
We did a power poll.
We did do a power poll. Oh, they're bye. They're off.
They're
this
on a
week.
bye, too.
Call, it's not a great week for the league, is it?
Oklahoma State at Arizona State, even though Oklahoma State's awful, can they get a win at any point?
Oklahoma State's at home, but yeah.
Oh, they're at home.
Texas Tech is at Iowa State. That's the best game in the league, but I still don't believe in Texas Tech.
And I do believe in Iowa State. So does somebody blink? Does Kansas State randomly lose at Houston? Or is that reserved for Utah?
Well, Houston's on fire, man. They won 2 in a row.
No, they're 2 of their last 3.
Did they lose one in between TCU
I think
and
they
Utah?
got smoked. I think they lost to Kansas? Yeah, they lost to Kansas. The Toilet Bowl.
Oh, yeah, that's right. 42-14, they got stomped.
And then beat Utah the next week.
Houston's rolling 2 out of 3.
Well, TCU, who then lost to or beat Utah and lost to Kansas and then beat Utah.
What a mess.
This is tough.
What a mess.
Again, the problem for Utah is that there's not even like a surrounding area where we're like, you caught a team at a hot time. No, you lost to Arizona, and then they had been stinking before and stunk after. You lost to Arizona State. I think they lost their next game too, right? It's just like every time.
But they've been okay.
Yeah, they have been, but there's no like, Oh, well, that makes sense why Utah lost
and then
that game.
TCU and Houston, that's rough.
There's not been a single spot where you thought like, oh, well, bad timing. No. These teams have been bad, and Utah's been losing to them. Can't lose this weekend.
All right.
You going to move Utah up the power poll again because they didn't play the same way we moved up Kansas State? We had Kansas State leap Iowa State because Iowa State didn't play.
They didn't show me anything.
So Utah doesn't show you anything this week? Do they fall or do they move up?
Well, we got to see what happens around them.
Oh, they moved down.
They moved down. Utah's going to go from...
Yeah.
They're going to be dropped by... Well, I guess, if Oklahoma State beats Arizona State, Utah will drop to 16. So Utah fans, you do have something to root for this weekend. Go Sun Devils.
All right, stay tuned. Hans and Scotty G are coming up next.
Thanks, Christian.
Jake and Ben, we'll talk to you on Monday, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.